Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, the weather outside is frightful, but the Plymouth Community Center is rather delightful. And so, let's dive into our clip. First of all, though, Merry belated Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy upcoming New Year, whatever holiday your heart cherishes and desires. And what I want to talk about today is a very, very narrow, very simple subject called ethics. And obviously, I'm kidding. It's as comprehensive and almost as infinite as the universe itself. And many, many great men and women have tackled the subject, Voltaire and Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, and I do not propound to cover it all in this clip, but I want to make a series of different aspects of ethics. And today, actually, I also want to address something personal because it ties in with ethics, but some very probably bored and somewhat unscrupulous individuals have been spreading somewhat curious rumors about me in the translation community, so I would like to address and dispel those rumors. And that is actually a part of ethics, you'll see. But first, what is ethics? So stay tuned for the media and gossip if that's what your heart desires. What is ethics? It comes from the Greek word character, and I agree. To have ethics, you must have character. And people who have character usually have more ethics, or a higher level of ethics. It has many aspects, but to me it means doing more constructive things than you do destructive things, but constructive towards good and constructive actions. It means having your own code of honor that you follow and adhere to despite temptations. It means also adhering to other codes of your family, your profession, your country, if those are good codes, and if they're not good codes, then changing them or leaving the group so you don't have to violate them, but violate your own code as well. I always think that your own code of honor is more important to you than any other code. So if any code violates your own code of honor, then your own code of honor prevails. But you shouldn't violate the codes you've subscribed to. I hope that makes sense. It also means helping and not hurting people of goodwill. This is actually where and why propaganda and rumors and gossip and rumor mongering is bad. We'll address it in a sec. And it also means, and this is the main topic of my chat today, being a great friend to yourself. And this is ironic because sometimes people will stand up for others, but they'll forget to be a friend to themselves. Before I define what I think it means to be a friend to yourself, let me share a story. I was supposed to be interpreting for a deposition in Minneapolis. I got there early. I wanted to talk to the deponent just to see what it was all about, what terminology might come up and so forth. Always a good idea. I started talking to her and there was one medical term that cropped up. And this was before the age of cell phones, or at least I didn't have one. So I asked the receptionist, can we check this term on your computer? I don't know what the lawyer was thinking. I don't know what indecent or illegal stuff he was hiding on his computer, but he stormed out of his office and he literally torpedoed me, or maybe he rammed me, like he physically pushed me, and he screamed like, what are you doing on this computer? And I said, that's not okay, you need to apologize. And they said, the deposition starts in there, go in and interpret. And I said, no, not until you apologize. And they refused to apologize, so I left because it was complete disrespect to an interpreter. And that very night, I actually wrote a report on that lawyer, and I was going to send it off to the Bar Association of Minnesota, but I sent it to him and his firm first just to give the dude a chance. So surely enough, he calls me and he says, I don't know what got into me, I'm so sorry. Would you like to have a coffee? He was not a bad man, but he was a little bit devious still because he forgot to bring his wallet to the coffee. So I ended up buying him coffee, but I was like, so standing up for yourself and insisting on people being polite to you and respecting you is definitely being a friend to yourself. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Because if you don't insist on politeness and decorum and tact towards yourself, how can you respect yourself if you don't demand that others respect you? So that must be a part of being a friend to yourself. Obviously, taking care of yourself spiritually, physically, and mentally is also being a friend to yourself. What else is being a friend to yourself? I can't believe it, but I can't read my own handwriting. Please forgive me. It means actually not allowing people to hurt you or harm you or spread lies about you. And there's one story that to this day gets my goat, makes me super mad. And it's from the book The Agony and the Ecstasy about Michelangelo. But this particular story is about Lorenzo Medici, who was a patron of the arts in Venice. And there was a monk, a priest in quotation marks, who came to Florence, I'm sorry, I think it was Florence, not Venice. And this priest's name, I always forget, it's either Savonarola or Savonarola. But he started preaching lies about Lorenzo Medici and saying that Medici was a minion of the devil and he was doing all this evil and he was blah, blah, blah. And Medici could probably just have the dude hung or ostracized or banished, but he didn't. For some strange reason, he tolerated this and he tolerated this, and he tolerated it so much that he actually fell ill and died. And on his deathbed, he begged for forgiveness from this very monk, this very priest who refused the forgiveness and said, "You'll burn forever in the flames of the inferno." So how sad is that? That's a very sad story. So now let's get into actually rumors and gossip and talking behind people's backs. I need my coffee. And the specifics actually that I promised to address about me. But why is that evil and why is that unethical? Well, it's unethical from many, many standpoints. And actually, it is an interesting point that when you start to become more successful and more ethical, these little critics and haters crawl from under the wooden stumps like termites and roaches and so forth, and you would never know. You learn a lot of things about yourself. Like, I'm actually very flattered because I seem to have my own personal biographer who is trying to teach me things about myself. And actually, you should be flattered. If you're getting criticized and hated on, you should be flattered because that's a part of success. I've translated books by a man I highly revere, Grant Cardone, and he says that the success formula is as follows. You take massive action. If your actions are massive enough, you will have critics, then you will have haters, and then the admiration, the success, the money come. But yeah, nobody ever tries to put down or criticize or hate on weaklings or unimportant people. So if you have enemies, and if people are blatantly and egregiously and falsely criticizing and accusing you, then you should be happy because you're doing something good in the world. It's unfortunately how this world works. But why is that evil? Because if you think of any evil perpetrated upon this world, like think of the Holocaust, think of the war in Ukraine today, think of anything of the sort, it was started by rumors, gossip, and a tactic used by communists, Nazis, and other such people called black propaganda. For example, before the Holocaust could happen in the world, Hitler had to confuse, but also convince the German people that the Jews were less than human and that they were evil. Because people are good for the most part. For the most part, they're good. They will never do anything evil to other people unless they think those other people are evil or less than human. And that's actually where this tactic of propaganda comes in. You have to first spread enough lies about those people. You have to accuse them of enough falsities in very covert and devious ways that other people will believe that they're bad and that it is okay to do something against them. You see? This works on a personal level as well. If you want to ruin somebody's reputation, anybody spreading it, well, they're just usually an idiot or a so-called energy vampire. But the truly good people are the ones that should think twice, because it is unethical to, one, listen to these things, two, spread them along, give a platform. Like this guy has been spreading it in two, at least, platforms that I know of, or maybe one, but I think two. And the chat leaders are the ones who are giving him a platform. Why? They're both ethical and religious people. Why would they even do such a thing? But anyway, that is why rumors are harmful and unethical. And I highly suggest cutting off all people from your lives who do such a thing. And if you're in a relationship, a romantic one or a partnership or a friendship relationship, then have a rule with your friend or partner that you will never accept or hear rumors about each other. But okay, right now I would actually like to address these rumors about me because, as I say, they're a little bit funny. First, I got slightly upset, obviously disgusted, because we're supposed to be, you know, messengers of understanding, not harbingers of misunderstanding. But then I was actually flattered. Except these things are, some of them are just lies, some of them are slander that the person could be actually legally liable for. All right, so let's address these rumors. Number one, I have been banned from the ATA conference, American Translators Association conference, and simply stiffed. Well, okay, you got me here, Felix. I don't know what to say. I guess I have been stiffed. I have been stiffed. When I was a waiter many years ago at various restaurants, I've been stiffed many times. So I guess I'm guilty as charged. You're right. I don't know what else to say. I surrender. And as far as the ATA conference, well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at facts. First of all, here's my ATA certificate of a certified translator, and this next year I'm planning to go for a different direction, at least one more direction. Here's a letter of gratitude from the year before last for being an ATA speaker. Here's a letter of gratitude from last year for being an ATA speaker. Here is an email from the conference organizer saying, Vladimir, we're so sorry we're not going to see you this year. We really hope to see you next year, and please submit your proposal as a speaker. So I'm afraid that this person is slightly confused, but it is not simply a lie. This actually fits perfectly the definition of slander. And slander, my friends, is a crime, actually called defamation. And anybody spreading this in their chats or elsewhere is also guilty of defamation. I wouldn't do it. Let's address the next one. All right, let's address point number 2. I have terrorized, stalked, and harassed people, including sexually. Like I said, it's always super curious to learn new things about yourself, and I'm simply flattered that I have a new biographer. I just wish that that biographer would be a little bit more diligent in his research and in his truthfulness. But how do you actually prove that you're not something? Have you ever wondered that? Like if I walked up to you and I said, you know, I think that you're an alien spy hiding out as a human or disguised as a human. Prove to me that you're not. And you would say, well, I'm not. Look at me, I'm human. And I would say, pretend to be human. You're just very good at disguising yourself. Maybe you're a witch. Well, they actually had, during the times of the Inquisition and witch hunts, they had this test, right? If somebody was suspected of being a witch, she, would usually be she, would be drowned or burned. And if that person burned or drowned, then okay, they were human. And if they somehow survived, then they were a witch. That's a very practical, quote unquote, and a very fair test, isn't it? But the truth of the matter, in this country and in all civilized countries and institutions, the presumption of innocence still holds, last I checked. So you don't answer idiotic and generalized accusation. And in fact, I have a very good friend named Pavel, and whenever people say things about him, he says, oh, that's BS. That's all he says. So my answer is, it's BS. In fact, BS means balderdash squared or baloney squared. But I will tell you after I address point 3, where this sort of kind of remotely comes from. But notice one thing, when people are trying to actually be ethical and constructive, yes, they may report something, they may. But first of all, any ethical person will address the culprit, quote unquote, directly. Like that's the brave way, the forthright way, if the person actually did something, directly and specifically, right? Like I would say, you know, you cheated on that exam, that's not okay, you should fix it. Secondly, they would, I already said, they would mention specifics. Secondly, they would go to the right person, the right authority. They wouldn't tell the whole wide world because people don't need these things. You know, people who spread rumors across the whole wide world, they're not trying to be ethical. They actually have very wicked intentions behind it. So that's something to watch out for, because truly helpful reports are always specific and they're always to the right person, never to a group, and they're never generalized. Okay, let's address point 3, and then we can be done with this somewhat boring deal. I have been removed from various court registries for fraternizing with defendants and giving, I wish I could read my own handwriting, not unlawful, untrained legal advice. Well, there is actually now an interesting story that I will probably share in the next clip when we discuss the Code of Ethics. But for now, let me just say this. In the last year, I have worked as a court interpreter, as a certified court interpreter with California, Nevada, North Dakota, North Carolina, have been asked, I think, by South Carolina, but haven't worked with them, Kansas, Colorado, I think, though their pay rate is not too high, so I'm not sure. Arizona, I believe, New Mexico, Oregon, and Alaska, but that's not so recent. I think that makes 10. And what am I even thinking? That's only 20% of all the states in the United States. Now, I did actually remove myself from one state because I didn't like their procedures and their treatment of interpreters. Remember that point about always being respected? And I said, no, if that's how you're going to treat your interpreters, remove me from your registry. That I did do. But such people who tend towards the energy vampires category, they skew things, they alter things, they invent things, they never tell truths. They usually don't tell complete lies, although the ATA deal that I shared in the first point was a complete lie, but they usually tell half-truths, so they're easier to believe, but they're not obviously exactly true. Now, where did this come from, and what definition of harass does this person have? In fact, harass is a very interesting word that gets thrown around a lot today. If you want to harass someone, all you have to do is say that they're harassing you or somebody else, because it's such a charged word today, right? But the truth of the matter is, I actually wrote this guy, and here's the letter that he wrote back to me. I'm not going to share my letter because it was a page and a half, but trust me on this, it was polite. And I basically said, Felix, what the heck? Who are you? I don't even know you. I'm not your enemy. What is your beef with me? Do you want to have a call? What do you want to do about this? Please stop spreading rumors because they're lies and, they're slander. And he replied in this very polite and tactful fashion. So my question is, who's harassing who? But the way I think it started, I'm just going to share this story, and honestly I'm bored because I want to go run and play chess and prepare for the new year and New Year's. But the way I think it started, because he alluded to this in one of his prior missives, is I was doing a project. It was a pro bono project on a book called Invasion, which actually earned an ATA speech later, and we were selecting translators. I was the project captain and the quality control leader and in charge of the project. And I think we were down to like 4 candidates, and both the author and I liked one particular translator. I don't know much about this person. She's also an interpreter. She may or may not be a good one. I have no clue. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. I've never heard her interpret. We did like her text as far as her style of English, because she's a native English speaker. There were a couple problems as far as meaning with translating from Russian. I thought I addressed it with her, and I thought that she would listen, because that's kind of what I expect from translators on the project, is being a team member and playing along. Then she sent me the first chapter, or half of the first chapter, and it was good as far as style, but it had major meaning issues. And I said, well, let's take a look here and here and here and here, and let's fix this and this and this. And honestly, I felt somewhat polite resentment and kind of an unwillingness. And I don't remember how it ended, but eventually she basically said, well, I'm the only native speaker here. And that's a trump card that doesn't really work on me. First of all, for all intents and purposes, I am as well. I don't care if I have a 5% accent or I don't. That doesn't matter. For all intents and purposes, in written English, I'll run circles around many native speakers. But that's not even the point, even if I weren't. Even if you disagree, that's totally fine, because things should be judged on merit, not on authority. Like if I made a mistake, I don't care if a first-year university student corrects me. If they're right, then they are right. And so basically that's what I said, and this person had to leave the project because she just wouldn't have it, and that's that. And then later, what I think, I don't know, what I think this guy means by me harassing somebody is several times I was feeling kindly and sort of like a gentleman, and I just hate disagreements, and I hate, this kind of tension. So I would write her and I would say, we had this disagreement, but we're both high caliber linguists. Why don't we just fix it And she would respond always with obscenities and profanities and so forth. So I don't know if you call a good-natured message during the holidays to reestablish peace harassment, then I guess I'm guilty. But anyway, so there's actually one really curiously, brilliantly compelling point, and that is this. Very often, people, I will even say criminally inclined people, will accuse others of things they themselves are guilty of or are doing. I'll give you an example. This is a complete mind shifter or opinion shifter. I had a relative, and this relative was completely, sincerely convinced that no single man on earth was ever faithful to his wife. Like, he believed this implicitly. And to me, it was laughable. I was like, how can you even think that? But to him, it was such a set and fixated reality that he couldn't imagine otherwise. Why am I saying this? Because very often, people will accuse others of the very things that they themselves are doing. So it is super telling. And you can thank him. You can be like, oh, well, thank you for confessing your sins. You know, in Russian, we actually say, a hat burns on a thief, or the thief's hat burns, rather. Because I think they had a custom whereby they would actually say that, and people would believe it, that if you are the one who stole whatever it was that was stolen, your hat will set on fire, and the thief would be like, you know, because they have a guilty conscience, sort of like The Telltale Heart, a story by Edgar Poe. So remember this principle. Not always. Sometimes if the accusations are factual, not based on hate, unbiased, objective, and grounded, of course not. But if these accusations just seem a little bit strange and strained, they are generalized, if they are ungrounded, then very often the person, and the reason I said criminally inclined is because, you know, somebody doesn't have to be a criminal with a record to be a criminal. Like, ethical crimes are also crimes. They may not be crimes in the law book, but they are ethical crimes, and they very often go hand in hand with legal crimes, you know? So people who accuse others of nasty and false things are pretty much advertising their own soul. A very interesting principle. What is my moral? I have shared a lot about me, but mainly I have shared about ethics. And I think that, to recap, be a friend to yourself. Always stand up for yourself. Don't ever let people bring you down or introvert you about yourself, because that's what they're trying to do. They can't stand the fact that they didn't achieve enough, that they have agreed with the status quo, that they have settled for achieving less than their dreams, that they don't feel worthy enough of themselves, so they're jealous. That's it. And their intentions are not good. They're wicked. And don't ever spread gossip and slander and libel and rumors, and don't ever listen to them, and don't ever lend them an ear or lend them a platform, because that in itself can be slander. In fact, Grant Cardone recently sued somebody for libel and slander for $1 million, and he won, and he got an apology. Will I do it? I don't know. I wouldn't like to. I have better things to do. But I will take any legal measures that I need to defend myself. In fact, I don't defend. Because in chess, the main principle is the best defense is offense. And that said, I need to go run, go play chess. I wish you a wonderful New Year's and a beautiful 2026. And we'll continue with the topic of ethics in the next year. Oh, there's one important aspect of ethics, which I almost forgot. And this is going to be a somewhat aesthetic conclusion to our video. But sometimes people forget to judge others by results. And I believe that this is the very best way to judge any man or woman is by results. And they should be judged by those who know them closely and have worked with them, or at least by observing their products in life, their results, you know? Because very often throughout history, biased and prejudiced and ill-intentioned people have been able to attack well-intentioned people and even bring them down, unfortunately, because there's some other standard, there's some other gauge or yardstick for judging people than by results, by rumors, by how politically correct they are, by their opinions, by their beliefs, by the way they speak, and so on. But the only veritable and true standard is somebody's results. And if a person continually and regularly gets excellent professional and ethical results in life, by definition, they cannot be a bad person. And so in some actually companies, organizations, maybe even countries, if we ever have an ideal world, people who are productive, professional, and ethical in their lives are protected. And in fact, the reports and the evil gossip bounces against the person who spreads them. That's what I think an ideal world should look like. So to conclude, not because I'm a braggart, maybe just a little bit, we're going to share some of my results, testimonials, messages, letters of gratitude, and so forth. So make your own opinions and judge people by results, will you? Happy New Year.